transporting myself back to that time and being in the cinema with my glasses, and the change in the voice and the effect must have been terrifying.
Side! Help him! Help! You mustn't stay where you are.
13. Death tonight. One of you.
The cost of living crisis is getting so bad that people are willing to live with the supernatural, because this week it's 13 Ghosts.
A struggling family inherit a haunted house, but the ghosts aren't the only thing to worry about.
William Castle, the producer of this motion picture, has a question for you.
Do you believe in ghosts?
William Castle, the director, was pretty prolific, made some really great films, but he was kind of known as a gimmick filmmaker. He loved crazy market employees, like paying women to scream and pretend to faint in cinemas around the country when he would release his horror films. For The Tingler from 1959, starring Vincent Price, he actually attached electrodes into the cinema seats so that it would shock people in the key moments when characters on screen would be getting shocked. When he released Mr. Sardanocus, he had a brilliant idea of giving out these glowing hands with thumbs, and the audience towards the end of the film could either point up or down to decide if the evil character should be punished or not. The idea was that there would be two different endings to the film that the audience could choose. Supposedly, there apparently really was an alternative ending, but there's no real substantial reports of the audience ever choosing the other ending, as obviously audiences would always root against the character. It's not entirely sure if they ever actually put into practice of changing the reel to put on a different ending, but it's again just one of the crazy sort of gimmicks he used to love to use for marketing. Most famously, in 1958, any cinema ticket bought for the film Macabre also came with a $1,000 life insurance claim they could put through in case you died of fright while watching the film. Complete horseshit. I doubt a real insurance claim could have been made, but it's the kind of genius marketing he would use in order to drum up interest in his films. And a lot of the time the gimmicks would be built into the actual plot of the movie. And that's true with 13 Ghosts as well, as they had Ghost Viewer, which mirrored the idea of the glasses that we see in the film that allows you to see the ghosts. These were kind of like a screen, half of which was a blue filter, the other half was a red filter, and the audience could look through the blue filter if they were scared and didn't want to see the ghosts, as it would mute the special color gradient that the ghosts were filmed in. Or if they wanted to see the ghosts more prominently, they could use the red screen. You know, it's kind of a genius move to build in the crazy market employee into the actual plot of the film.
So he's basically a Del Boy director.
Yeah, pretty much. He actually has a great catalogue of films and actually was the producer for Rosemary's Baby.
Oh.
Bought the rights of it, loved the book, wanted to make the film, but the studio just in the end thought, what is going to be this serious, grounded film? We can't have this guy's name attached to it because he's just known for crazy, wacky gimmicks. It will attract the wrong audience and they won't like the film. It will get bad reviews.
So basically, he kind of like built himself a prison in the fact that his reputation of preceded him. So it's like, fuck it, we don't want that.
Pretty much. But it's also become his legacy and I think it's fucking great. Like, I love the idea. Like, why don't they do that anymore? Why don't we have, Twisters is coming out next month. Why don't they have wind machines ready to go off in the cinema? But getting to this film, it feels like if Frank Capra made a horror movie. Right from the get-go, it lets you know the tone of the film when the family who, are struggling, they're apparently always having their furniture repossessed because they can't afford anything. The dad's not a bum, but the mum chalks it up to being forgetful. I guess he forgets to pay the bills, but she doesn't seem too fussed. The kids don't seem traumatized by constantly having their possessions reclaimed, but they have real money trouble. So when the young son, who it kind of hints might have some clairvoyant abilities, wishes just to have a home filled with furniture, the very next day they hear his infamous rich, crazy uncle has passed away and left his house as an inheritance. So they can't believe it. But the film lets you know the tone of it straight away when the ghosts have literally been left in the will for the family.
Dr. Zorba collected ghosts from all over the world. You inherit them, too.
Oh, come on. They go with the house.
Going back to the father, I struggled to buy that whole forgetful thing because he's a lecturer at, I think, Natural History Museum, and some other guy has to cover for him, and he's saying, like, when did this happen? And he can say it word for word. He can remember all this shit, but he can't remember to pay a bill.
Guess they're giving like wacky scientist vibes. You know, he's brilliant, but he forgets to do his shoelaces. You know, Einstein had the same outfit every day, so he didn't have to worry about what he was going to wear. You know, he's that sort of character.
I did actually watch this film twice. The second one I watched started with the director, William Castle, in his office, giving an introduction to the glasses, and the screen was going blue throughout. And for the first cut, that wasn't even in it. It was just straight through black and white without any of that stuff.
Yeah, so you would have seen the cut that was obviously made for cinemas. Even in the modern day where people are very savvy about filmmaking and the content they watch, probably want to have some sort of instructional for how to use the glasses. I remember when Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez made Grindhouse, which was the idea that it was two films stuck together like the old Grindhouse double bills, even with fake trailers in between. And they ended up realizing across America, and I assume a lot of cinemas around the world, they had to hire people to wait by the exits when the first film ended within the double feature to let people know that there was another film to come. So yeah, of course you'd have to explain it, but also like the blue filters and the other filters, that was back to what I was talking about with the screens, where you could use them to manipulate how much of the ghost you were seeing on screen during those moments. I've seen that version before, but I watched the normal made-for-TV version where it doesn't have those moments.
When I'm watching it and I don't have those stupid ghost glasses with the blue or red, and it's literally flashing up blue like in my face, and I'm like, nah, this is fucking annoying.
Oh yeah, well, without a special ghost viewer device, it just becomes stupid, and it really does expose that those moments are just a real gimmick. But I gotta say, I do find something charming about the little intro and outro that he does.
If he weren't a film director, he'd be a fucking excellent door-to-door salesman. You'd buy his sponges and Tupperware. Going back to the plot, so this family have thought they've struck gold. They're moving into this mansion. We're introduced to Ben the lawyer, a young, slick, up-and-coming guy, and he basically tells them, look, if you're moving into this house, a stipulation of the will is, if you move in, you have to stay there. If not, and you don't like it, it goes to the States and it's going to be redeveloped into a park. They talk about the ghosts, and the ghosts come with a will, and they just kind of like do that classic laugh of like, ha ha, ghosts? And you're like, oh, you're going to be in for it later, you arrogant bastard.
And Ben seems to be convinced that the ghosts do exist, and the daughter's got the hots for him pretty much straight away. And by the way, how smoking hot was she? She was fucking gorgeous.
She just opens the door and she just immediately fancies him. She's like twiddling her hair and all of this. And it's like, oh, born in the wrong era. This really pissed me off, but she's gorgeous. She is gorgeous.
And it makes her sexy as well, is because she kind of like chasing danger a bit. When they first move in and they discover the Ouija board, she's the one that really wants to play it. And even when they start to get all scared because the Ouija board's actually starting to move by itself, first sign that there's anything haunted going on, she's the one that wants to keep playing it and kind of pushes it, which fucking made her way sexier. But it's also good, this moment, because you get the first sign that something creepy's going on. Even when they ask, is anyone going to die, the Ouija board floats in the air and points to her. But the dad is just having none of it.
It was just floating in the air. There was nothing touching it.
There's probably a very simple explanation for it.
Well, I don't know what it could be.
Everyone's freaked out. The mum's upstairs kind of like complaining and yelling at him like, we need to move out of here. That was freaky. And he's just kind of like, nah, it's fine. Whatever. They hear some creepy groaning coming out of thin air. Clearly not human, whatever it is, but it's coming from somewhere in the house. And he's like, it's the wind.
Yeah.
Like, who gets wind in their house? It was to the point where I thought, is he in on something, or he knows there's ghosts but he wants to move his family there? If like someone wanted to molest his kids, he would have no idea. He was just so oblivious.
But it kind of ties into him not being able to pay the bills. He's just a nice guy, but a dope.
Yeah, he's absent-minded. That's a good point.
Buck's going around and just messing about, but when he messes about, he always finds like a secret panel, and like Shaggy and Scooby will be fucking about and go into a bookshelf and it will spin around, the Ouija board comes out, and as you said, it points to him having some sort of connection with the supernatural or other world, a bit like Red Rum Kid in The Shining,
yeah.
you know, red rum. This is why I always like to try and view films 2 times before we do reviews, because I always pick up stuff the second time. I clocked it, like he has a connection to the house.
But it's also good, he's not having like these vision moments. It's all happening by accident. But it's funny as well, because like I was saying earlier, where I like the tone of the film, where it's like if Frank Capra made a horror movie, because everyone just kind of matter-of-factly knows ghosts exist. The lawyer knows they exist, the person doing the will knows they exist, the living maid apparently knows. Everyone refers to her as the witch, and even in the first scene we see her, she's carrying a broom. But did you recognise her?
Again, I recognise her face, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
She was the Wicked Witch of the West in Wizard of Oz. So again, it's letting you know the kind of film it is, where it's not like a passing line. Pretty much every time she's referenced, she's called the witch.
Oh, shucks. What did you have to open the door for? Couldn't you wait for the witch?
You better stop calling her that, or she'll cut your tongue out.
Told ya. She's even got a broom.
That's what this film's supposed to be. It is stupid and fun, and it's supposed to be an experience.
Well, I didn't get the context to that, and it was just actually pissing me off. So now I know it's quite clever, actually. Going back to the Ouija board, everything you've seen in popular culture about Ouija boards, would you ever try it?
Yeah. I'll give it a go. I'll do it in someone else's house.
I'm really scared of shit like that. Anything to do with the supernatural. You know, the Candyman, say Candyman 3 times in the mirror. I don't know, something freaks me out, but I want to give it a go. I really would. Like, all we actually need to do, every single thing that I have seen in horror films, is find some sort of ancient script, and if we get haunted, read it and then get rid of them. Or get a priest from one of the local churches to go round and splash everything with holy water.
So life just kind of goes on. They're living in their house. The wife is freaking out. The husband seems to take no notice. Buck's having a great time running around the house and messing with the ghosts. And the daughter's spending all her time trying to fuck Ben, the lawyer. But then the dad finally comes across the ghosts and sees them for himself, because we discover that the uncle that was working there was a scientist, and he had supposedly managed to collect 11 ghosts and even invented this new technology, these glasses that would allow you to see the ghosts. When he died, he became the 12th ghost. But when they asked the number during the Ouija board, it apparently was 13 ghosts, because as we learn, they're looking for a 13th. And in a couple of nights' time, someone is going to die. I did really like the effects of these scenes. You know, there's one moment where there's the headless circus lion tamer and his lion, you know, messing around in the son's bedroom. But there is that thing where you can tell, because it was this new technology where you could see the ghost or not see the ghost that you're choosing, it went on kind of too long at times, way longer than it would have if they weren't showcasing a new technology. Kind of like when 3D was getting big again in the early noughties. There always had to be a moment where like someone threw something at the screen and it came right at you. They had to have a couple of moments showcasing the technology. Obviously, we watched it in the normal versions where it wasn't the blue and red hue, so the pacing goes a bit wonky in these moments, but overall I dug the effects. But you are kind of just sitting there reacting alongside the dad.
As you know, I can't see 3D properly, so it's kind of fucking my eyes up. I have been going to doctors for my eyes. I have nerve damage and my left eye used to have a squint, so I had to wear a plaster. And I think because my left eye is so much weaker, it fucks up the 3D. So the effects were kind of like, as you said, the lion one was, I was just like getting a bit uncomfortable and being like, oh, can this now end? Because they're going back and forth for like a good 3, 4, 5 minutes. And I want to point out about the ghosts. One of them is just fucking shit. It's literally a floating ball of like tangled up wires. So what the fuck's this?
Yeah, I liked how weird and how much variety there was in the ghosts.
Yeah.
Like they were proper weird. And I enjoyed the scenes where the ghosts would be kind of interacting by themselves. Like there's one point where a bunch of them are sort of having a chat in the kitchen, and then someone walks in and they all disappear or freak out. So I like this idea that they really are living in the house with these ghosts, and at times the ghosts are trying to sneak off for a chat. They're getting interrupted by living guests. One subplot that develops that I kind of could tell from a mile off is that Ben, the lawyer that the beautiful daughter's got the hots for, is actually a villain. They give you a few red herrings early on, thinking maybe it was the maid / Wicked Witch of the West. But we learn that Ben actually killed the uncle because he knows there's a treasure buried somewhere in the house. He knocks one day and finds the young kid has found a bunch of notes that seemingly must be from the treasure. He decides to hatch a plan where he's going to convince the son to keep it a secret among just them. You know, I get why he makes the plan, but I would be shitting myself if I was Ben, because he is not a good secret keeper.
I can keep a secret.
What's so important?
Gotta keep a secret.
What secret, Buck?
Oh, hiya, Buck. Yes, it's all right. A secret? Well, tell me about it, son.
Suppose you had a secret. How would you keep it? I'm not trying to see your old ghosts. I'm waiting for Ben. We've got a secret.
Like, there was moments where it felt a bit molesty, the whole, like,
Noncy,
the conversations they were having. But he would not be a good victim because he was immediately mouthing off to everyone. Like, the very next day, Ben's visiting the dad. Buck, the son, calls him at his work and mentions, oh, me and Ben have a secret. Oh, I can't tell you anything about it. And he's blabbing to everyone like, oh, what would you do if you had a secret with Ben about something in the house?
Yeah, the noncing behaviour was winding me up when he was literally like, oh, you run off to bed now and I'll wake you up so early.
Buck's like, you can wake me up at any time.
Yeah. Buck clearly fancies him. He's like, Ben.
Sleep now. I'm going to hit the sack myself.
Okay, good night. You can wake me anytime. I won't mind.
What pissed me off about that is Ben's a lawyer, so he must make bear dough. Like, why does he want a box of, like...
What, treasure?
Yeah.
What's treasure? He's an evil, greedy lawyer.
Yeah, he's an evil, greedy lawyer. Yeah, you're right. We find out that Ben's dressing up as a ghost and he scares the daughter. She starts screaming, being very noncy again, like creeping around the house in a mask.
We don't know that at the time, and it's funny because I do like the effects of the ghost majority of the time, but that one practical effect, or what I thought was a practical effect of a ghost, really shook me up, and I was like, wow, that was effective. Like, I really liked that. And I thought it was odd that there was no other practical ghost effects for the rest of the film. But then obviously it turns out that that was actually Ben in a costume later on, trying to scare him. Because as far as he's concerned, of course there's no such thing as ghosts. He's just trying to ply that into their heads to freak him out and get him to run away so he can get the treasure. I like the fact that they had continuity within the effects. They never skirted, and the only time they did go for a different style of special effect to achieve it was it actually turned out to not be a ghost at all. But it's funny because, like we said, so many times when Buck, the kid, is pretty much saying, hey, Dad, I have a secret with Ben, the adult that keeps showing up here, but I can't tell you. And the dad just kind of shrugs and goes, okay.
I'm not trying to see your old ghosts. I'm waiting for Ben. We've got a secret.
Ben? He's not coming here tonight.
He might. It's a pretty big secret.
Yes, you told me. But it can wait until tomorrow.
And he just goes, Ben's been fucking me. It's like, okay, Buck.
Yeah, and he's just like, oh, really?
Yeah.
And walks out of the room.
I thought Ben was a great guy.
But as it's developing on, they decide, obviously, what do we need? We need a seance. So they find that the weird maid / Wicked Witch of the West was a clairvoyant and can run a seance for him. So they get together for a seance. Conveniently, Buck isn't allowed because he's too young, so he's free to be doing shenanigans with Ben trying to find the treasure. It's got to be one of the first seance scenes ever in film.
Well, again, it wound me up a little bit because if we go back to the earlier scene where they're in the kitchen and the Italian, who, by the way, is my favourite ghost because he murders his cheating girlfriend and then his mother-in-law, and it's like, well, everyone wants to do that, you know? He's basically saying, well, the witch knows everything about the ghost. Why didn't they just do it then? Like, why didn't they just do this seance like straight away. And we're like, let's talk to Uncle Zorba.
Because you've got to wait till it's dark so you can light some candles and make it all look freaky and cool. But I like this scene as well. What do you think of when the dad is getting possessed by the spirit of his uncle?
Side! Help him! No! You mustn't. Stay where you are.
13. Death time. One of you.
Obviously, we've seen a lot of films now, you know, some of the greatest horror films ever, like Exorcist, Poltergeist, Rosemary's Baby. The list goes on and on and on. But transporting myself back to that time and being in the cinema at that time, you know, with my glasses, and there was really no age rating, so I assume it'd be a lot of kids watching it. The change in the voice and the effect must have been terrifying. So, yeah, I thought it was quite good, actually.
Yeah, I got to be honest, none of the moments are scary for us in this day and age, but they're all effective. Like, I liked all of the effects, and not in a it's charming in its antiquated 1960s style kind of way. I genuinely like those moments, and you could see, throw yourself back into people in that era, you could see how people would freak the fuck out, definitely.
Uncle Zorba comes out and says, basically, we know the title of the film, 13 Ghosts, and says someone has to die. So automatically you're thinking, shit, it's going to be one of the family. Unbeknownst to them, while they're doing this seance downstairs, Nonce Boy has crept in again, picked Buck up, and we find out basically earlier on that Elaine the witch found Uncle Zorba dead, face ripped off. Everyone just associated it with it being the 13 ghosts that have done it to him. The dad has found this mechanism earlier on in the film. There's a little switch on the bed that he's fiddling around with, and we see it going down in that. So he's basically used the bed to crush Zorba to death, and he's about to do it to poor Buck. But all of a sudden, Zorba's spirit saves the day, frightens him, pushes him onto the bed as we slowly see the bed. It's like kind of like Con Air when the thing's falling on him, and he's got like 3 hours. He's just like, and the bed is slowly descending. But I guess Zorba possesses his body so he can't move, or he's just so scared that the bed crushes him to death. What did you think of it? Well, I mean, it was quite satisfying.
Well, it was satisfying. Like, it was a little bit. I wish there was a bit like, when it comes down to it, the ghostly apparition kind of just goes on top of him, and he just sort of squirms on the bed for 20 seconds going, oh, yeah, nothing really happened. But I actually kind of like that, because it cuts to the family are like, what's going on? They run in, and you're expecting, you know, a scene where they run in, see it, the daughter screams, Buck explains to him what happened, the dad says, my God, it was him all along. But you get none of that. It cuts straight to them counting all the money they found because they found the treasure. No one gives a fuck that Ben's dead. And it's kind of like the Caddyshack, we're all getting laid ending, where everyone's just counting the money. They're like, this is great. The maid is winking at the screen. Everyone's happy. All their money troubles are solved and everything's great.
Where do you think our new house ought to be?
New house? What do we want with a new house?
Boo! Boo!
Buck!
It's nearly a bit of a superficial ending, because literally everyone's just like, we have money now, everything's great. And even Buck says to the witch, I'm just going to stay here and guard the money.
I don't know, like the bed thing. Obviously, my take on it is Ben, the lawyer, put that in there to crush him to death.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That was his grand plan.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's like,
why was that ever a possibility?
Yeah, like,
the uncle's an inventor, so maybe he was inventing a Wallace and Gromit style fling him out of bed in the morning contraption.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I do know what you mean. It's one of those things like, why was that even a function you could
flipping up and buttering itself? And it's like, but what makes me laugh is the dad's discovered it earlier. Look, because the candle's floating about, and he's found the thing, which is just literally behind a curtain on the bed. It's like, oh, there's a button here, and he doesn't say one word about it or say, why is it doing that? He just looks at it going up and down and just walks out.
The dad is gormless. Like, he really is. He is a moron. But again, that is the kind of film it is. Like, usually in haunted house sort of movies from this era, Of course the parents are going to be the focal characters, but they're not. It's from the kid's perspective, and it has that kind of early Spielbergian child's perspective when we see these sort of paranormal things rather than the parents.
I'll tell you who's also gormless. The police department of this place didn't fucking find the button that crushes them, and they're just like, oh, natural causes, when his face is
Natural.
ripped up.
Your face just
He's
dematerialized.
He's like a cartoon where they're like crushed into the floor like Tom and Jerry. But yeah, it's a film from the 1960s, so we'll look past that. And the real ending is they're counting their money like fucking Scarface, push it to the limit, and it's there like in the fucking thing. Elaine the witch goes into the room and the glasses explode. And she sweeps it up and has a smirk on their face. I still haven't really worked out what that was about.
Well, the boy said, are the ghosts coming back? And she says, they'll come back. They always do. Ooh. Usually you'd be like, well, they want a sequel. But I mean, sequels weren't as common back then, but you only really got sequels for B movies, which this, I think, would have been considered. So I'd assume they were setting out for a sequel, but maybe you just want to have a classic ending that hints like, oh, but is it really over?
And the ghosts? They haven't really gone, have they?
They'll be back. They'll be back.
Real soon, I hope.
They said that they're staying in the house, but in my cut, which I watched, it said house for sale.
Oh.
So I didn't really understand that either. And then William Castle in his office, you know, sitting there at his desk is saying, do you believe in ghosts or not, boys and girls? Like, if you don't, go home with your glasses, turn the lights off and use them and see what happens.
I love the fact that he would insert himself into the movie. It's just that classic thing, like, it is quaint. It gives you that 1950s simpler time, even though it wasn't a simpler time, but the movies depict it in that way, so you have that nostalgia for it. Do you recommend 13 Ghosts?
I thought it was quite fun. It was really cool to see the two different cuts. I thought the whole glasses thing and the effects, which I found difficult, and definitely the blue screen flashing up. I mean, I'm glad someone with epilepsy watched it, but and 100% really enjoyed the interaction with the audience from the director. And in fact, I'd like to see a bit more of that.
Yeah, no, I definitely recommend it. I just think this film is fun. It feels like if Spielberg made a ghost movie in the 1960s. I wish cinema still had this, where you could try crazy gimmicks. Having paid actors actually in the audiences at cinemas to freak people out. Life insurance in case you die of fright during the movie. Ultimately, they're crazy market employees. It's not for all films, obviously, but for a certain kind of film, it's fucking fun. I love the fact that William Castle was willing to push the envelope with technology and using it as not only plot devices, but technology that the viewer would use in the cinema. Obviously, we can't experience that today because the film was released in a certain format, unless you make your own Architect style. But just as a film alone, if you love old movies, absolutely, I recommend 13 Ghosts.
Just a moment before you leave. If any of you are not yet convinced there really are ghosts, take the supernatural viewer home with you. And tonight, when you're alone and your room is in darkness, look through the red part of the viewer, if you dare.